This doll has ruined lives, cursed thousands, and even inspired one of the most terrifying horror movies of all time. And if you're not careful, you might be next. This is the story of Robert the Doll, and trust me, by the end of this, you'll think twice about ever disrespecting a toy again. Imagine this. You're walking through a museum, and you see a doll. Not just any doll. A worn-out, century-old toy with a sinister grin and eyes that seem to follow you. You laugh it off, maybe even snap a picture without asking permission. But then, things start to go wrong. Your car won't start. You lose your job. Your relationships fall apart. And you can't shake the feeling that it's because of the doll. This isn't just a story. This is Robert the Doll, one of the most infamous cursed objects in the world. And today, we're diving deep into his terrifying history. But be warned, this isn't for the faint of heart. Robert the Doll's story begins in the early 1900s in Key West, Florida. He was a gift to a young boy named Robert Eugene Otto. Yes, the doll shares a boy's name. The doll was given to Eugene by a Bahamian servant who, according to some accounts, practiced voodoo. From the moment Robert entered the Otto household, strange things started happening. Eugene's parents would hear voices coming from his room. Voices that didn't sound like their son. They'd find furniture overturned, toys scattered, and Robert sitting in a different spot than where he'd been left. But the most chilling part? Eugene insisted that it wasn't him causing the chaos. He claimed it was Robert. The doll was alive. As Eugene grew older, the bond between him and Robert only deepened. He kept the doll with him at all times, even into adulthood. Visitors to the Otto home would often find Eugene having full conversations with Robert, as if the doll were a real person. But it wasn't just harmless chatter. Those who crossed Eugene, or more accurately, crossed Robert, started experiencing bizarre misfortunes. One story claims that a delivery boy who mocked the doll tripped and broke his leg on the way home. Another says a neighbor who insulted Robert woke up to find all the plants in their garden mysteriously dead. And then there were the nightmares. Visitors to the Otto home would wake up in a cold sweat, swearing they'd seen Robert standing at the foot of their bed, staring at them with those lifeless, glassy eyes. But it wasn't just the Otto family who experienced Robert's wrath. Even strangers who visited the home reported feeling an overwhelming sense of dread when they were near the doll. Some claimed to hear faint whispers, while others said they felt an icy chill in the air, even on the hottest Florida days. And then there were the stories of Robert moving on his own. One guest swore they saw the doll's head turn to follow them as they walked across the room. Another claimed they saw Robert's hand twitch, as if he were about to reach out and grab them. As the years went by, the hauntings only intensified. Neighbors reported seeing Robert moving around the windows of the Otto home when no one was there. They'd hear eerie giggles echoing from the house late at night. Even Eugene's wife, and wasn't spared. She claimed that Robert would often glare at her from across the room, and she once found him sitting on the stairs, blocking her path, as if daring her to step closer. But the most chilling incident occurred when Eugene passed away in 1974, after his death, and decided to get rid of the doll, donating it to the Fort East Martello Museum in Key West. But Robert wasn't done. Almost immediately, the museum staff began reporting strange occurrences. Lights would flicker, objects would move on their own, and some even claimed to hear faint whispers coming from Robert's display case. One of the most famous incidents involving Robert occurred in the early 2000s. A group of tourists visited the museum and, despite the warnings, decided to take pictures of Robert without asking for his permission. As they left the museum, their car broke down. When they finally made it home, they discovered that all the photos they had taken were either completely black or distorted, with Robert's face appearing in places it shouldn't have been. One of the tourists even claimed to have seen Robert standing in their living room late at night, only to vanish moments later. Another incident involved a museum employee who decided to move Robert to a different display case. The next day, the employee called in sick, claiming they'd been plagued by nightmares all night. When they returned to work, they found Robert back in his original spot, as if he had never been moved. The employee quit shortly after, refusing to ever speak about what they had experienced. But the hauntings didn't stop there. Visitors who disrespect Robert, whether by laughing at him, taking his picture without permission, or even just doubting his power, report experiencing a string of bad luck. Some lose their jobs, others get into car accidents. One woman claimed her house burned down just days after she mocked the doll. And it's not just stories. The museum has a wall of letters from people begging Robert for forgiveness, apologizing for their disrespect, and pleading for the curse to be lifted. But here's the thing. Robert doesn't forgive easily. After Eugene's death, Robert was passed around for a while before ending up at the Fort East Martello Museum in Key West. But the curse didn't stop. In fact, it got stronger. Even the museum staff aren't immune to Robert's wrath. They've reported hearing footsteps in empty hallways, finding objects moved overnight, and even seeing the doll's expression change when no one's around. One curator swore they saw Robert turn his head to watch them as they walked by. And then there are the cameras. Security footage has captured strange anomalies around Robert's display. Shadows moving on their own, flickering lights, and even what looks like the doll shifting positions. But the most chilling part? Visitors who take photos of Robert without asking permission often find their cameras malfunctioning or their pictures coming out blurry. Or worse, with Robert's face twisted into a menacing sneer. Over the years, many theories have emerged about why Robert is so powerful and so dangerous. Some believe that the Bahamian servant who gave Robert to Eugene imbued the doll with dark magic, using voodoo to bring him to life. Others think that Robert is a vessel for a malevolent spirit, one that latched onto Eugene and never let go. And then there are those who believe that Robert isn't cursed at all, that the stories are just a product of mass hysteria and overactive imaginations. But if that's the case, how do you explain the countless reports of bad luck, the strange occurrences at the museum, and the letters begging for forgiveness? Whether you believe in the supernatural or not, one thing is clear. Robert's legend is as strong as ever, and his story continues to terrify anyone who hears it. So, what do you think? Is Robert the doll just a creepy old toy with a lot of coincidental stories attached to him? Or is there something more sinister at play? Whether you believe in curses or not, one thing's for sure. Robert's story has terrified people for over a century, and his legend shows no signs of fading. So, here's the question. Would you dare to visit him? And if you did, would you ask for permission before taking his picture? If you're brave enough, hit that subscribe button, but don't blame me if Robert comes knocking.